Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Are you worried about the world of AI and how it might destroy the creative business? Are you also somebody who's ambitious, but also afraid of change and changing your identity and your career? Well, this episode is for you. I talk with Naty Brava, who tells us all about what to do and what to expect in the future. So welcome to the show, Naty.
Hi, Crystal. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on today. I know you are a researcher, you're a certified coach, you help professionals navigate reinvention, but take us back to what brought you to Paris and where you're originally from.
So it's a story that I would say it's on two planes, right? So on the physical plane, I was recruited for a PhD position looking at digital innovation ecosystems. And then on the spiritual plane, I had already planted the seed a while ago. So I'd come to visit a friend who's Parisian, a friend from university. And at the time I was working on Capitol Hill. So I'm a Washingtonian originally, started my career on Capitol Hill. I mean, literally as a high school intern, giving tours and, helping with the legislative staff. And then after university, I came back to Capitol Hill as Senate staff. So at that time, I was at a crossroads. I was at an inflection point with my career in politics. And my friend said, hey, why don't you come out and visit me in Paris? And when I came to stay with her, I realized she was really living a true bohemian life. And, she was a dog walker by day, but also a poet, and she was a writer, and all her friends were creatives. And we spent all my time visiting, going and supporting her friends at their shows and other creative endeavors. I remember going to Shakespeare and Co. for a writer's workshop with them, and something just unlocked in me. And I was like, I wanted to write to my sister back home and say, send for my things. I'm staying in Paris. Like, this is it. Like, this is a really cool life. And, but, life took me elsewhere. I ended up actually taking a job in Southeast Asia right after that. I'd actually interviewed for the job in Paris, but I just knew in general, the trajectory I was on in Washington was quite a rigid one in terms of what is considered success and what's supposed to be the next step for you in your life and your trajectory for your career. And Paris unlocked something in me. And I remember feeling like, I love this place. I don't know how I will ever live here, with language or my career. I don't know how I would ever end up here, but it's definitely a city I would love to live in, not just visit. And so I just allowed that seed to be planted. And a lot of life happened between that first visit to Paris and actually showing up for my PhD. But I remember the year before getting hired for the PhD position, I wrote on a Post-it note 2 words, creative and innovative. I needed to move towards that. I didn't put a lot of detail or specifics, but those 2 words were on that Post-it note, and I looked at it every day. And that's what I was recruited for, to research innovation. So that's how I ended up in Paris as an innovation researcher. And that's how I ended up in Paris.
That is such a crazy story. And I love the sticky note. Like, you just put it out there, like you said, planting seeds. And then how does one get to research innovation? What an interesting job.
Yeah, it's, I think the time right now is insane because so many things are happening so quickly. But I knew that I wanted to do something that was more forward thinking, where people were not stuck on kind of the old guard way of doing things. And this is why I really wanted to do something with people who are working in tech, people who were big dreamers and were willing to, put their life's work into trying to do something new, trying new methods, new ideas, new products. That is essentially the definition of innovation, right? And
Yeah, and definitely creativity too.
right, there is a really creative aspect to tech and innovation because you're creating something that's never really been done before. You might be taking some ideas from elsewhere, but you really are trying something new. So the office I work in is actually a startup incubator. So I'm around all these startups and all these startup founders who are trying the new thing, whatever the new thing is. And so I really wanted to be around that energy of people who were thinking of possibilities versus thinking of 100 ways why something wouldn't work because it's never worked before. And I think we're really moving in a place now where the only people who are really going to thrive in this new era with a lot of, artificial intelligence taking on a lot of our tasks are the people who are willing to rewire their brains and think about what's not been done before. And so this is really where my coaching practice stems from.
Definitely. And I was reading something the other day about how people are so worried that AI is going to steal their lives and yada, yada. But AI can only work off what we give it. So if we're not innovating, it's not evolving either.
Oh yes, that's true. I mean, it will go stagnant. And yes, there is absolutely the talk in our lab about are we kind of self-cannibalizing here? I mean, are we creating something that is basically going to replace us? But I will say what I know for sure is that if if AI is going to be, taking care of all the efficient tasks and all of the tasks that, require us to recall facts very quickly, then all we're going to have left is art, right? And art made from humans is going to be top tier, premium. Any experiences with humans, anything made by humans is going to be, I think, put at a, just a different status, somewhere we've never seen
Yeah.
before. So this is the time the for us humans who are creating art and who are creative to really own our skill set and really own our talents for sure.
Yeah, that sounds really good for most of the artists out there because I think already they're scared, seeing AI creating paintings, creating photographs. Everyone's creating like these Christmas photographs right now from AI and
Mhm.
everything looks so perfect. But like you said, I think it's just, people will still want real things made by real humans.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, I always loved photography, right? I always loved film photography. I always loved how it kind of put me in a place of presence, just getting the right shot and then editing. I've always loved photography. I feel like with our cell phones, I kind of took a step back from it and was kind of exploring other things. And I really, right now, I love generative art, generative video creation. But in that, what I'm learning in that sector is, there are people who are nervous about, well, if we're just able to create a video so quickly, you were able to create films, in 12 days versus, maybe 1 or 2 years of production, then what happens to me, what happens to my sector of work. But I genuinely believe what's happening is because the generative AI art is so easy to produce and put out there. I know a lot of people are calling it slop right now. Um, but I'm not so quick to call it slop, but it is a lot and it is in abundance. I think I really believe the art that is created slowly by humans is just going to be put at a different level. Being able to go watch a ballet coordinated by a human, performed by humans, um, being able to, buy something sculpted by someone in their studio by hand, slow crafted, um, film photography, watercolor paintings done live. I think these things are just going to be a different level of at a different level of appreciation, where we used to see it as such an indulgence and a luxury to, to take the time for art, whether as a patron or as someone who's creating it. If the bots are doing everything, we're going to have a lot of time for ourselves and to indulge and to enjoy in the most ideal scenario, right? So I think
Yeah.
this is the time for people to position themselves creatively.
Yeah, I think that's good news for a lot of creatives out there because I know a lot of people are nervous right now. It's new and people are a little freaked out. They're like, what's going to happen to my job? So I've already had some friends who work as translators, and work like that. It's just, and even copywriters, it's the world is changing so quickly. So talk a little bit about some of the common things you find in innovation as a researcher. Like, is there some common ground for innovation to happen? Is there some kind of thing that's like, that this person's going to be innovative because they did X, Y, Z?
Yes, so I would say one of the through lines I've seen, and what I've seen in different regions. Now, so not just the Paris region, not just the European Union. So I've done work in East Africa, Southern Africa, and Southeast Asia, and I've also lived in East Asia. What I have seen as a through line, the most innovative people who I think are really capable of achieving their objectives are the folks who are not so interested in the way other people did things before. So they're not as interested in how, let's say, I'll give an example that might be relevant to, say, American listeners. So let's say the conventional advice for financial security is you invest in your 401k and or there's a pension scheme, right? You get a job that has this pension scheme and you have your 401k, and this is going to give you financial security. Somebody more innovative would say, okay, that's great that that's worked for you, but now there are these new instruments called, say, crypto, right? Or I'm going to take another route. I'm going to do FIRE, right? Financially independent, retire early. I'm going to have the FIRE lifestyle. I'll be part of the FIRE movement, and that's how I'm going to do it. They're the people who really are less interested in convention. Far less.
Yeah, more counterculture.
Mm-hmm. The people who have kind of, maybe they've take a sabbatical and they go backpack for a year or two, or they decide they're going to ride their bike from Paris to Beijing. It's those folks who are like, I'm not so interested in the usual career trajectory. I'm going to see if there's another way to land, to leap. And this is actually called in global economics, this is called leapfrogging. It's when there's this assumption that for a way for, let's say, a less prosperous country can become like a wealthy industrialized nation, this assumption that they must do it, their society must develop in the same way a global north society developed. But instead they say, you know what? I know you all had the land, you had the infrastructure to have, landline phones everywhere in your country. We never had that. So for us, what worked better were cell phones. And that's why everyone had a cell phone in East Africa. Many people had cell phones in East Africa far before, there was that same level of penetration, say, in Europe, because they just had to find their own way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. It's about, like you said, finding what works for you, and that can be across many things in life, which brings me to my next question. Talk about your adaptive leap. You help people do this through coaching. How did you design this? Talk about the adaptive leap.
Yes. So exactly. In so many different ways of life, right? Your health, wealth, relationships, we don't have to follow the same ladder. We don't have to go up the exact same rungs as everyone else. And just helping people understand, especially people who've really the super type A, I'm speaking as a Washingtonian, I know my folks back home. Super type A, have done everything the right way. They've never missed a beat, right? They're always like the one to watch in their career sector. And it's really hard for them to imagine just not doing what everyone else around them did, including their mentors who are, very successful, maybe their parents also. But that's the only way they've ever achieved success, was by following what their mentors and people more senior to them always did. But now we're in an era where you have to really think twice about that. And the thing is, people can get very hesitant, right? Like, well, I'm not sure because right now, I don't know, I might be promoted. But we don't have as much time to debate these things anymore because things are just changing so quickly. Industries are really changing very quickly. And Adaptive Leap is about having you really think strategically about personal reinvention. And not only that, I'm realizing there is another cohort that I think can really benefit from this new way of thinking about how to change and how to be successful, are people who are leaders in their industry. They're being invited to conferences and on panels, and we're having to speak to big teams about the changes that AI is bringing. And maybe they are not that confident about what to say, because a lot of people really don't know. No one really knows how things are going to end up. But my thing is no doom and gloom, faith over fear. That's the way to lead. And so I'm really here to help with two camps. The folks who on an individual level know it's time to change, and they really want someone to really help them get from A to B about how they view change and how quickly they do change and adapt. And then also with leaders who are leading in their sectors and leading teams, and they want to be prepared. They want to craft a narrative of hope and faith, about how to move with these changes coming in the future.
I love that. Hope and faith. That's what it's all about, not doom and gloom.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Mm-mm.
So many creatives struggle with letting go of old identities. How do you help people grieve who they were so they can step into who they're becoming?
Oh, yes. This is a really important one. And this is why Adaptive Leap is coming from leapfrogging, right? And I just thought there was something so symbolic about the frog, right? This is an amphibian who is adapted for land and water, And I think that's really who we just have to be now. I think there was a period of time where maybe our societies were constructed in a way that was just comfortable enough for us to find an identity and stick with it, right? But now we do have to be that frog. You do have to be, whichever metaphor you prefer. You want to be the caterpillar that is morphing into the butterfly. You want to be the snake that sheds skin. You want to be the amphibian that's in and out of the pond. Either way, this is actually one of our best traits as animals, as Homo sapiens, is that we can adapt. But our brains are still wired for comfort. All right. And we just have to be super conscious. I think it really is about consciousness and being present, because we as humans, we can think about what we think about. This is actually what makes us very special creatures, is we can think about what we think about. So when you feel that feeling of that morning of, well, I used to be this person and now I'm this, it's like, okay, that was just talk to yourself. Hey, that was a great chapter. It was a wonderful chapter in my memoir. Now we're writing a new chapter. That's great. Life is long. It's beautiful, and let's move on.
Yeah, completely. Like you said, we have no choice in this fast evolving world. So how do you reconnect with your spark when burnout has dulled your sense of curiosity or play? I know a lot of people are suffering from burnout right now, especially with social media and having to show up all the time and wear so many hats. How do you help people reconnect with their spark?
Oh, this is a very, very good one. And it's so real. I think what I like to call, we have too many tabs open, right? Just too many tabs open. And I think it's important to do the off-screen time, to go for the hikes, to have the long coffee in the park, um, to play. If you have nieces and nephews, young children, absolutely, they're just the best at this. Definitely lean into that. Your role as auntie or uncle. Um, and I think also, um, I think time away from the screens is big. For me, I I'm a person of faith, so it's important for me to, have time for prayer and communing with other people of my faith at church. Um, but whatever, I know it sounds so simple, but honestly, anything that can get you away from the screens, I think
Yeah,
is great.
and back to people off the
Hmm.
screens.
Or even just reading a physical book.
Definitely. Yeah, I think a lot of people are realizing that more and more, and even laws are being put into place for young people, which is good because it's once again, it's a new thing. We don't know how it's affecting our brains. Well, now we do. It's not good, but we need to take breaks. And so, what are some common false leaps creatives make, and what usually drives those decisions?
Let's see. Well, one thing I do see a lot with creatives, um, which might seem counterintuitive, right? Because usually when we think of creativity, we think of being in flow, right? Just total flow. And in some ways, I do define creativity about with this thought of unstructured flow. But I think when creatives take this leap and they don't put structures in place, this is how you can end up a quote unquote starving artist, right? Where you have all this creativity and all this art and all this, output for the world, but you've not put anything in place to actually sell your art or share your art or market it or let people know that it exists and that it's, ready for sale. So I think sometimes when we go creative, if we go too much one way, we forget that it's still good to put some structures in place, to respond to people's messages, to have a calendar so we're organized and we don't miss appointments, to still watch the time to make sure we can go meet with, a potential agent who wants to help us, maybe sell our crafts. So I think still leaving room for structure and logistics is good. I think this is sometimes
Yeah,
a mistake people make when they go to their creative arts.
definitely. Yeah, they just want to leap, and it's all intuition, which it is a lot of intuition, but you
Mhm.
also have to have some business sense too, which I think we forget sometimes.
Yes. Mm.
And what stories about success or productivity do creatives need to unlearn right now?
Mm, I think, and maybe it's a bit more cultural, but I think I see two things happen. I think one thing I see happen is there are the people who want to optimize all of their time, all the time. And I do think it's okay to get some balance and some presence and allow yourself to be, you know, re-energized and re-inspired, right? So you don't, just because you do have a week off to do some writing or editing or whatever the case, if you actually feel burnt out, I know that week off seems really great to do your art, but if you're burnt out, then maybe you actually just need to relax and actually really take it as a vacation, right? Um,
Yeah,
yeah. And so I think sometimes people think even if what they're doing, let's say outside of a 9 to 5 is creative, then it's it's almost not like work, but sometimes you really need to fully rest. Sometimes your art is still it's still work like we were saying. Sometimes you still have to put the structures in there and worry about logistics and sometimes you need time off from everything. So I think that's one thing. Okay, another thing I'm seeing from a lot of creatives, especially ones who have been in, let's say, the film industry for even a generation, is I think some people have built an entire life around their craft. And so the idea of moving into something else, or closing that chapter, is really difficult for them because they do see it as a loss of identity. And I don't think this has to be the case at all. I think folks really have to move into a space of seeing themselves as regenerative, renaissance, as cliche as that sounds, but, literally rebirth and multiple rebirths. I think a lot of us were raised by a generation who they decided on one thing pretty early on. They did that one thing for multiple decades and they retired as that thing. And so when they were introducing themselves to people, they led with their title. I am this, I am that, I am this. Now we really are moving into an era of multi-hyphenate. I remember when being a multi-hyphenate meant that you were flighty or that you were not serious, or you were, ungrounded. But I think this is really the way that people are going to be able to thrive going forward. And so we have to figure out who we are outside of what we do, right? And we just have to be okay with maybe having multiple titles or no title.
I love that. Yeah, that's so true, because I think it's something a lot of people are struggling with today. And they're like you said, they don't want to look like flighty or like they don't know anything because they know too many things. But I think that's the world that we live in now. And that's okay. It's a changing time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And what's one small experiment that a creative could try this month to test a new direction without blowing up their lives?
Oh, without blowing up your life, I say this. I advise folks, diversify your ecosystems, okay? Get out there and meet people who are doing things completely different than you. So go to a painting meetup, go to a I don't know, run club, go to something with folks doing things in AI. I mean, especially if you're fearful of AI, I think for me, the more I learn about it, the less I'm fearful. Not because there aren't risks and not because I don't understand the risks, but I just in general think diversify your ecosystem. And so go hang out with people, maybe go on Illuma or what are these other event websites, just depending on what town you're in, whatever region you're in. Find those folks who are doing something very different from you and go spend time around them. Go push yourself. Go try a skill where the people around you are better at it and you're struggling, and just know that it's conscious. It's conscious. Like you purposefully put yourself in an area where you have to stretch yourself and you have to humble yourself. And I think the more we do that and you keep telling yourself, I'm not excellent at this, but I could be at some point. No one here who's excellent was born doing this thing, right? No one here was born running. No one here was born painting. Or doing, generative AI video making, right? So go put yourself in different ecosystems of people who are doing things better than you.
I think that's great advice. And what does a successful life look like to you now compared to earlier in your career?
Oh, wow, this is a great question. For me, I am from a culture that is very family oriented. So my family's from East Africa and it's very community oriented, very family oriented. And I hate to admit this, but starting my career in politics on Capitol Hill, it was very much about, that pantsuit, right? Like I'm a woman in a pantsuit and I'm gonna, like the most important thing is my career and everything else will kind of happen by, I don't know, I'll just fall into family and home life somehow, some way. But That's not necessarily the case. I think now you really do have to be intentional about wanting a family and home and wanting a community, because you really can just put yourself completely in your work, completely. And I think family is super important. Having home life is super important for me personally. And career, now I think some of us are going to be forced to think about the other things that we value if AI is doing things in a far more efficient way than we are. Granted, the field of politics is a little bit different, but will it be different for that long if the AI decide that, hey, we're actually, a little bit more intelligent than you all. We're going to make the decisions here. Who knows? I don't know. But I think for me, home life is super important. People are really important. Neighbors, community, that's all very important.
Definitely. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's part of like getting older too.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, family is so much more important than my career. What?
Right. And, sometimes for us, a lot of expats, your friends are your family, right? So you have chosen family too. But, again, just having the time and the space to nurture those relationships, I think it's so important.
Definitely. Yeah, I completely agree. Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on. Where can people connect with you, hire you for coaching, and learn more about your work?
Yes. So all the important links are on my Substack. So that's Naty Brava, NatyBrava. And I'm also on Instagram, Naty Brava, and on Threads. But really all my work, videos, articles, all of that is on Substack.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today, and I can't wait to see what you'll do next.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.